It is a beautiful day, ladies and gentlemen, to go ahead and start talking some Dynasty Fantasy Football. Don't have too much to say. Make sure you're dropping a like on this. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you play Dynasty. And of course, if you want to get your roster broken down on one of these live streams, you can do that on flogfantasy.com. On flogfantasy.com, you can also find all my up-to-date Dynasty rankings, all the up-to-date Dynasty rankings of your favorite content creators, plus all their premium content. And we actually now have a new feature on flogfantasy.com where users of the site, members of the flock, are able to submit their own rankings for the community rankings and also able to submit their own articles, whatever they want to dive into. We're not going to publish every article, but we're going to pick about one a day, the best of the best, to go out there and be put on the site. Super excited about that. But let's go ahead and let's dive into Justin's team here. My man, thank you so much for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. I'm going to be super happy to dive into this. Real quick side note, speaking of articles from members of the flock on the site, I believe the Pound just had one published there, which is really, really exciting. I may have to have you on to talk about that, my friend. But anyway, diving back into what we have here from Justin. It's a 10-team half PPR start 11 league. Feel free to use wherever. So love the fact that it's going to be start 11. We can actually dive into the fact that we need a little more depth to get by with this kind of format. Now, of course, at the end of the day, it's not like depth is going to be the #1 priority because it still is only a 10-team league in comparison to a 12-teamer. But this looks like a roster that should be ready to compete this season. I mean, if we're going to go through and look at this, starting off at the quarterback position, we currently have Justin Herbert as well as Trevor Lawrence. I mean, hard to get better than that combo. What's very nice about having these two top-end quarterbacks, right, is you have so much flexibility with what we want to be doing with this roster. I mean, we can go through and we can kind of dive into either path, whether or not it's going to be a path that leads us to contending this season or a path that leads us to maybe rebuilding for 2024, right? Almost either way we go, we are completely fine with our two quarterbacks and we don't have to make any adjustments from there. Now, we don't have a QB3 on this roster, so we could definitely look to go through and we could look to add someone on that front. And lucky enough for us, we do have the 102. So generally in a 10-team Superflex format, quarterbacks are going to be worth a little bit less than they would be in a 12-team Superflex league. And the more starting lineup spots that we require, like the more general flex spots that you have, the less important the quarterback position is going to be overall, right? I mean, if we go through and if we look into this, you're going to be able to start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wide receivers in this league. You can start up to 7 wide receivers. So it's not like we need to go through and say quarterback's the only thing that matters. Like, you could definitely pivot over and go with the skill positional guy if you really wanted to in a format like this. However, I mean, not having that third quarterback, in my mind, it's very easy for us to just go ahead and take Anthony Richardson, take Bryce Young, specifically with this roster where it looks like we most likely are wanting to compete this next season. And it's a 10-team Superflex league versus a 12-teamer. And this is our quarterback 3 rather than like our QB1, QB2. I may opt to go with the ceiling play with this team and go Anthony Richardson over Bryce Young. I know that's what most people are doing as well. But now going over to running back, we're currently sitting with Josh Jacobs in the starting lineup alongside Kenneth Walker. I mean, obviously you have a massive hit for Kenneth Walker in particular with Zach Charbonnet coming in. But what you do like to see is you like to see the fact that you have Tony Pollard on the, I don't want to say bench, in the flex spot here. Tony Pollard arguably is your running back 2 this season and your running back 3 for the long term. We don't have too much depth outside of that. You can go through and you can start Brian Robinson, but in general, having those 3 guys that we can confidently start at the running back position in Pollard, Kenneth Walker, as well as Josh Jacobs, it's going to be very exciting and we're going to be just fine with that. Now, the primary thing that I want to do with this league is I want to be building around wide receiver. Obviously, we already have our elite level quarterbacks. That is great. But for this team to be able to be dominant not only for 2023, but also the long term as well, since we can start 7 wide receivers, I really want to go through and get as many of these guys in our starting lineup as possible and as many of these guys that we can comfortably rely on as possible. Now, Chase, Waddle, obviously both wide receiver ones this upcoming season, and both players that are incredibly young, that we're excited going forward. I mean, they're both only going into year 3. Amon-Ra St. Brown as well going into year 3. Someone else that's a wide receiver 1. We have Brandon Ayuk, who in a format like this, where we can start up to 7 wide receivers, is a real difference-making player. I know a lot of people are tired of us looking at their team and maybe going, oh, okay, it's a 10-team league where we're only starting 8 guys. Brandon Ayuk and Deontay Johnson, those level wide receivers aren't really going to make a big difference. No, Brandon Ayuk moves the needle in a league like this. You can start 11 guys. Ayuk is a great guy to build around. We have Christian Watson down there, one of the flex spots. I mean, we also have on the bench Joshua Palmer getting replaced by Quentin Johnston. So this is a team that I think you could go through and you could look to try to get some help with wide receiver depth in the long term. Obviously, as of today, we don't necessarily need to be making any of those moves. Now, going over to tight ends, we have Kelsey as well as Kyle Pitts. So this is the big question that we have to ask ourselves, right? Do we want to push all in to win this season? Because if we truly want to push all in to win this season, it's very nice to build around Travis Kelsey. And if it was a shallower starting lineup, I would 100% say you don't even think about it. This team looks like it can be competitive this next year. So we're going to keep Travis Kelsey and we're going to be very excited about him. However, considering the fact that, I mean, this team is deep, you can start up to 7 wide receivers. We have Kyle Pitts down there on the bench. I would honestly look to sell Travis Kelsey, even with this being a contending roster, because I think that this is a contending roster with or without Travis Kelsey. And if we're going to be looking at the overall scoring, right, this isn't a tight end premium format. It's start 11. So, I mean, my friend, I know you have access to it. Obviously, I mean, I think the majority of people watching this should head over to the site, go to the draft guide section and pull up our Dynasty research book. There we talk about the importance of adjusting for like a start 11 league versus like a start 8 league. And a big adjustment that we want to be making is assuming that it's not tight end premium. We want to be devaluing tight ends, because what's going to happen is the more wide receivers you can start in this league, you can start up to 7 of those guys. The smaller percentage of your starting lineup output is going to be accounted for by the tight end position, especially when it's not a tight end premium format and we're not putting one of these guys in our flex spots. So if you were playing in a deeper league, if you were playing in a league where, say, you were only starting 8 guys, Travis Kelsey is going to be making up a significant percentage of your starting lineup output, and he is going to fundamentally change the expectations for your team going into next season. However, in a league like this, I would almost rather trade Travis Kelsey and get a wide receiver that we feel comfortable about their production in the long term as well as this season. So let me go ahead and let me pull up flockfantasy.com real quick. Just look at our rankings and get a sense of some wide receivers that we have next to Travis Kelsey. That way we could go through and try to figure out exactly who we want to be trading him for. And because keep in mind, if we're going to go through and move Kyle Pitts into the starting lineup, while yeah, we're getting a small hit from a points per game perspective, given the fact that we're starting 11 guys and it's not a tight end premium format, that small hit that we're getting from a points per game perspective in 2023, honestly, is not going to really move the needle at the end of the day. And if we're able to pick up more long-term value, I kind of would like that. So if I'm looking at flockfantasy.com right now and looking at the average across all experts when it comes to the Dynasty rankings, we have Travis Kelsey in the same range as Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs. Kelsey's going to turn 34 this next season. Specifically with this kind of format, I don't want to be building around elite level tight ends. We currently have 2 of them in both Travis Kelsey as well as Kyle Pitts. So I think we're probably going to go ahead and we are probably going to look to try to sell Kelsey if we can in particular, just because I think that this is going to be the year. It's like the last time you're going to really get something strong for Travis Kelsey. But outside of that, I mean, going over to the 203, keep in mind this is like the 211 in a 12-team league. I think we're probably going to be trying to target a wide receiver in this range. I mean, it's just going to be dependent on who's on the board, of course. Now, going back to what we were talking about with this being a contending roster, we don't have our 2024 first. So we are highly incentivized to contend this next season. But even with that Travis Kelsey trade, I think that we can still be more than competitive. I still think that we could win this year. And honestly, if we're picking up a wide receiver like Davante Adams at the end of the day, it may allow us to score more points this upcoming season. If you're looking at the difference that you have with like a Davante Adams and a flex level player here versus Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts. And we're never starting Kyle Pitts in one of these flex spots unless he breaks out and is an elite level tight end, which in that case, we probably should have traded Travis Kelce anyway, regardless of if we were contending or not. But yeah, thank you again, my man, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. I really hope that we were able to help you out here. Really hope that we were able to get you something from this video. And as always, if there's anything that I can do for you, please do not hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. And this week, we have a very exciting announcement. I'm going to get some custom merch going in your direction. Obviously, you're already on flockfantasy.com, but assuming that you signed up to Underdog with promo code FLOCK as well, just be on the lookout for the Google form. I'm essentially just going to be asking for your address so I can go through and I can get you all that stuff. It'll be posted in the Discord, my friend. But thank you again. And real quick, we have Brandon with a very cool question here asking, who is the person to get you into fantasy football? So I'm going to let everybody here type in the chat what their answer is. Here, Judd says it's his older brother, which is very cool. My person to get me into fantasy football was actually my mom, funny enough. It was a long, long time ago, but essentially asked if I wanted to share a fantasy football team with her. And of course, immediately I became addicted and immediately I took it over. And when was the first time I won that league? It was whenever Chip Kelly had like the magical season in Philadelphia. Polo says, friends at work. Shuey says, my dad asked me to join his fantasy league, won my first season. Judd says 20 years ago, his older brother got him into it. That is awesome. I'm actually going to steal your question here, Brandon, and I'm probably going to go ahead and I am probably going to tweet this out in just 1 second. But Peanut Butter Waver says his youth pastor, one, that's really cool. Two, what is even cooler, my friend, is the fact that you change your Justin Fields avatar to a Bijan Robinson avatar. We're going to be best friends now, my friend. But let's go into our next team that we're going to look at. Actually, real quick, we have a donation question coming out. This one is from Cameron. Says, 10-team Superflex, we have Josh Allen, ETN, Breece Hall, Chris Olave, Drake London, Tyreek Hill, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brandon Ayuk, Pat Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, Ingram, Kincaid on the bench. Do we move Pat Freiermuth, Ayuk, or Deontay Johnson and a second for another wide receiver? So keep in mind, 10-team Superflex format. I mean, here, obviously, we have a lot of depth, but yes, in general, this is the exact kind of trade that I'm going to be looking to make in a 10-team Superflex league. Assuming that this is not the league that we just looked at from Justin, who actually had to start 11 guys in his 10-team league, in general, every chance we get, we're going to be looking to sell the depth here, and we're going to be looking to go out there and get an elite level asset in return, right? Specifically in a 10-team league, depth isn't really going to matter. And the majority of 10-team leagues that I look at are start 8, are start 9, start 10. And in that format, if we could sell, say, Deontay Johnson and a second-round pick, and we get a wide receiver that we're much more confident with the upside, that's the thing we're focusing on, the upside of the player in the long term. I really like the idea with that overall roster, my friend. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody coming out. And let's go over to our next team. I am sorry, Archangel. I love looking at MFL rosters, but the people on the live stream don't. So I'm going to do this as a personalized podcast and shoot it to you through DM. We're going to skip over this one right now. I will get to yours today. Jay Brooks says, hey, Mason, been watching you for a while now. Love the content. Thank you, my friend. 12-team half PPR, no tight end premium, 6-point passing touchdown. We started this league last year. First pick is startup draft results. Second pick is our current roster heading into the season. Made quite a bit of trades last year, won the championship, have yet to make any moves this season. Pieces I'm most willing to move include the 202, Ramondre Stevenson, Scary Terry, DJ Moore, Treylon Burks to get a high 2023 first, quarterback, or tier up at wide receiver. What are your thoughts on the players we should be looking to target? Team needs I should focus on moving forward with my goal being win now, and the values of the pieces I mentioned moving. Also curious, what do you think the roster post-startup draft versus what we ended the year with? Okay, so let's go ahead and let's pull up both these things. Just first off, the general overview on what we are going to have here with post-startup. So post-startup, we're looking at Jalen Hurts, Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara, Terry McLaurin, Treylon Burks, George Kittle, Antonio Gibson, Josh Jacobs, Deshaun Watson. So interesting starting lineup. I mean, obvious. Okay, we had Garrett Wilson, Ramondre Stevenson, Christian Watson. So even coming out of the startup draft, I mean, we had one hell of a team. Let's look at the difference between what we are looking at now. So today we have Jalen Hurts, still that main piece. Jacobs, still that main piece. We added on McCaffrey, still have Garrett Wilson. So it looks like what we did is we just added on some extremely premium win now running backs that are going to add 1,000,000 points to our starting lineup. But in general, as we go through and look at this team, I kind of agree with your overall sentiment on the moves that we are going to be looking to make. And I think that it makes a lot of sense. Unlike the first team that we looked at in this live stream, where you had to go through and start 11 guys. In this league, we're starting 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flexes, and a super flex. So, I mean, in this league, it's going to be a little bit different. We are going to be starting, I believe, 9 players. And if we're only starting 9 players, yeah, I'm completely fine going through and looking to sell some of these depth pieces, looking to sell DJ Moore in a package and get an upgrade somewhere else, especially when we have the overall depth with this team where we have Ramondre Stevenson, Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Treylon Burks down there on the bench. I mean, we are in a phenomenal spot in general. Now, one thing I do want to point out is the fact that this team does not have their 2024 first. So just like what we looked at with the team at the very top of this live stream, this is going to be a roster that looks to contend this upcoming season. We've talked about this time and time again, but as soon as you trade away your future first there, all of a sudden you lock yourself into being a team that is contending right away. We can't really look to do anything else. Now, of course, I mean, if we really, really wanted to, maybe we could go through and look to trade and get our 2024 first round pick in return, then maybe look to go and play for 2020. No, I mean, this team is centered around win now assets. For us to blow this team up and look at any other option outside of pushing in to win right now would just be foolish, because starting off at the quarterback position, I mean, we're currently sitting with Jalen Hurts, Deshaun Watson, who in my mind are both going to be top 10 quarterbacks this upcoming year. I don't necessarily think that we have to worry about that too much. Now, we don't have a quarterback 3 here, of course. I mean, maybe you thought Malik Willis was going to be it for us last season, but clearly, Willis is nothing at this point. So like you were already mentioning, I do really like the idea of going through and adding in a 3rd quarterback. Now, in general, this league, unlike the first one that we looked at, in my mind is going to be an even larger quarterback premium. You're getting 6 points per passing touchdown. So inherently, that is going to skew the overall percentage of the starting lineup output that we are getting at quarterback. And then on top of this, we are only starting 9 total offensive players. So if you're looking at the percentage of your starting lineup output that the quarterbacks are going to account for, they're going to account for about 22 to 23% of the starting lineup requirements in a start 9 league versus about 18% of the starting lineup requirements in a start 11 league. If my math is correct. I believe it is. So if you're going to look at how that skews the overall production, especially when it just comes to the percent of the starting lineup that the points are being scored, quarterback is going to be extremely important. So I would really like to focus in on trying to sell one of these depth pieces and get a respectable quarterback 3 in return. Now, obviously, we can start Jalen Hurts as well as Deshaun Watson each and every week regardless. So it's not like we needed someone that we could plan on putting in the starting lineup today. Now, going to the running back spot, we have Jacobs, Christian McCaffrey in the starting lineup. We have Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb as well. So these are running backs that we can be very confident about the production this next year in 2024. Now, beyond that, I don't really know. 2025, who the hell knows what you're going to get with Nick Chubb when he's pushing 30? Who the hell knows what you're going to get with Saquon Barkley when he's pushing 29? Same thing with CMC when he's pushing 29. Same thing with Josh Jacobs. All these running backs were drafted from 2017 to 2019. So these are definitely win now assets, but they should be more than productive enough to make sure that we are the top team in the league this next season, right? So I don't really want to be messing with this core at all. I think this is the core that makes us the favorites in our league over the next 2 years. And that's what I want to primarily be focusing in on, considering the fact that we traded away our 2024 first. Now, going over to wide receiver, we have Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore in the starting lineup. Going down to the bench, I mean, we are currently sitting with Amari, Terry McLaurin, Treylon Burks. So in general, when we have such a dominant team like this, right, where we don't really have to worry about the floor of a player, right? I mean, the floor is never going to matter. The only thing that matters is the ceiling of that wide receiver, because if they ever want to crack this starting lineup when we have a juggernaut roster, they're going to have an extremely high ceiling. Deontay Johnson, Brandon Ayuk, these guys aren't getting in this starting lineup. So if we wanted to make that move, my primary thing I'm going to attempt is trying to sell DJ Moore and trying to get a piece that maybe has a little more upside. Now, going and looking at the rookie picks that we currently have the 202. So my main thing is I would love to package together DJ Moore and the 202 and try to get a wide receiver that we think has an extremely high ceiling. Maybe they have a lower floor than DJ Moore in general, but like we were already saying, the floor doesn't really matter when we have guys like Amari Cooper or Terry McLaurin, Ramondre Stevenson down there on our bench. So if we can package together DJ Moore as well as the 202 and maybe move up and get a top 8 pick, that's what I would really like. I think you could honestly maybe try to push and get the 106, 105. If that happens, oh my gosh, it's a beautiful trade. And then I would easily be willing to include the 308 to get that done, of course. So what I would try to do today is I would go out there and offer DJ Moore and the 202 for the 105. And throw in the third as well. Go DJ Moore, 202, 308, and try to get the 105. Offer that same deal for the 106. See what those owners say. If they reject, then we move and make the same offers for pick 7 and pick 8. That way we can hopefully get a Jahmyr Gibbs, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison level player coming in that while, yes, like we already mentioning, some of those guys have a lower floor than DJ Moore, but they can fundamentally make a difference both in the short term and the long term with this team, with, in my mind, a much higher ceiling given the situations that they find themselves in. And like we were already discussing, you don't really need to worry about the floor of these individual options. Now, going over to a potential Ramondre Stevenson deal, I think that honestly with Ramondre, it's going to be difficult for me to say exactly what we should be looking to sell him for. Maybe this is a play where we're going to look to go through and try to move off Ramondre Stevenson, who's our running back 5 with this roster, and try to bring in a quarterback 3 that we can find, some talent with. Now, let me go ahead and pull up flockfantasy.com real quick, and I want to look at where Ramondre Stevenson and the quarterbacks are in these overall rankings. So the quarterbacks that are next to Ramondre Stevenson in these rankings include Kenny Pickett, Daniel Jones, Trey Lance, Jordan Love, Geno Smith, and maybe you can really stretch and try to get Tua. If we could make a deal like that and be able to bring in that third QB where we are able to get someone we can confidently start during the bye weeks, as well as if there's an injury to one of our top 2 guys, I think that deal combined with the DJ Moore plus the 202 to get a higher rookie pick in general, I think those are going to be the primary 2 deals that we're going to be looking at. And I think that's really all we have for you with this team. Congrats, my man. I can easily see why you won this league last year. I'd imagine that we're probably just going to go through and push to try to win over the next 2 seasons. And then honestly, we can probably look to blow it up after that and blow it up in 2025. But hell, we're going to be making a lot of money until then. But again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. And as always, if there's anything that I can look to do for you, please, please do not hesitate to let me know. But Justin Brooks out with a donation says, my dad started our Fam and Friends Dynasty League in 2003. I joined in 2005 at 16. I've won 4 out of the last 5. He passed in 2013, but we're still keeping the league going in his memory. RIP. RIP your dad, my man. That is a phenomenal story. That has to be like the best. That has to be the best Dynasty story I've ever heard. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, my man, but that is really, really cool for that Dynasty League to be so damn important to everybody involved. And yeah, again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock, my friend. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, please do not hesitate to let me know. Please do not hesitate to reach out. But let's go ahead and let's dive into our next team here. This next team actually looks like another MFL team. Like I said, I love looking at MFL screenshots. This is actually from the MFL app. I was always an MFL mobile kind of guy, so not necessarily the app. I will definitely say that people in the live stream aren't used to looking at this, however. So we're going to go ahead and we are probably going to skip by this. I will do it in a personalized podcast later today and DM it to you, my friend. But let's go ahead and let's dive into Gindy's team or Jindy's team. I don't exactly know how to say this, but thank you again for being a member of the vlog. Going to be super happy to go through and check this out. It says 10-team Superflex PPR tight end premium. Mason, my man, been watching for a long time and love to see the channel grow in all the opportunities you're getting. Thank you, my man. He's actually out here in the live chat right now. Okay, so I'll make a mental note that I don't need to send you a DM of this, my friend. But yeah, going to be really happy to go through and check this one out. So you're saying, I love how the team looks with the 2 starting quarterbacks. Feels a little light on the running back side, but feels like we have some wide receiver, firepower at wide receiver. Was thinking about trying to package Debo and Kamara together after a good game this year, but not exactly sure where I want to go with this roster. Thanks. I appreciate all the work you put in. Grade A content. No, thank you again, my man. First off, I do want to say that you will have a very, very difficult time selling either Alvin Kamara or Debo Samuel. Now, I completely understand, like, thinking, okay, well, we're just going to wait for the good game. Once they have a game where they pop off, then at that point, we're going to look to sell. That's kind of how everybody is feeling with both of these players. Like, it's not necessarily a unique take there, and I think you are going to have a much more difficult time than you're initially thinking. We don't really know if you are going to get that spike week. Obviously, there's an outside chance that you end up getting a Alvin Kamara suspension. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen, but nonetheless, you would have a very difficult time selling these assets currently. I mean, right now in underdog drafts, like Alvin Kamara is going as like a running back 4 or maybe a low-end RB3. Now, diving into this team, you're saying we have 2 great quarterbacks, seeing that we have Burrow as well as Justin Herbert. And just like what we were talking about with the team at the top of this podcast, you have so much flexibility when we are looking at both these guys, right? I mean, if you have both of these quarterbacks, you can really go into contending this year or go in with the long-term build, and you don't have to ever worry about your quarterback position. Both these players have an extremely high floor and an extremely high ceiling in the short and long term. So bookending your dynasty team with these 2 guys, it's just phenomenal. And it gives us so much flexibility in what we're going to be trying to accomplish. Now, we don't have a quarterback 3. Obviously, it would be nice to go out there and get one of those guys. We do have our 2024 first, so it's not like we are completely locked into contending this year. Now, a big thing is if it's a 10-team Superflex league in comparison to a 12-team Superflex league, I'm always going to be less worried about not having a quarterback 3 because it's going to be way easier to go through and trade for like Derek Carr, trade for like Geno Smith if we really needed to make a play at quarterback. Now, going over to what we have at RB, we currently have Jahmyr Gibbs, J.K. Dobbins in the starting lineup. And then down there on the bench, down there in the flex spots, we have Alvin Kamara, Cam Akers. We don't really have anything on the bench. So right now, we have a lot of depth at running back. You're primarily getting the upside play from Jahmyr Gibbs here, who obviously will probably struggle in the short term, but long term, we are going to be really excited about this running back option. Now, there's not too much to be discussing. I do think that you're probably going to see either Dobbins or Akers having that bounce back season now 2 years removed from their very severe injuries. It's difficult to project all these guys really being something. Now, what I do want to point out, however, with this running back core as well, you could easily see one of or both of J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers popping off this next year, right? And we could be looking back and going, oh, okay, well, yeah, we really just needed to make sure that they were going to be able to be fully healthy. And then there are always the great running backs we thought they were coming out of school. That's a possibility, and that's in the range of outcomes. But what is also in the range of outcomes is these guys to fail this next season and to be never heard of again. It is a possibility for either one of these guys to be Kerryon Johnson, which is very sad to think about. But if we go through and start thinking that way, and we also look at the contract situation with Alvin Kamara, we can say Alvin Kamara is probably nothing in 2024. It's a possibility that we need to go through and completely overhaul the running back position next offseason. Like right now, you could really see this going in either direction, which makes things incredibly difficult in terms of trying to figure out which direction this team should be going as of May 9th, right? As of May 9th, it's very hard to know if we should be rebuilding or if we should be contending. Going over to wide receiver, we have Debo as our top option. We have Ayuk as well, so we're going in on that San Francisco 49ers offense. We have Jameson Williams hopefully coming in after the suspension and making a difference. But in reality, we don't have that depth that we really like at wide receiver. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson is a player I love the prospect profile of, but the primary issue, of course, is the fact that he's coming off a significant injury. We're probably not going to get anything from Wan'Dale Robinson this next season, so it's difficult for us to sit here and really really project this out long-term at all, or even project it out for this next season. So with Wan'Dale, I would love to see an upgrade here in the starting lineup in the short term if we were going to look to be a contender, because while I like the prospect profile, it's difficult to see him being that difference-making player for us right now. When Jameson Williams isn't going to be a difference-making player for us right now. Going over to tight end, we have TJ Hawkinson, which obviously Hawkinson's very similar to the quarterbacks with this team, right? Very similar to the quarterbacks where we have Justin Herbert as well as Joe Burrow here. And we can say, okay, well, with Burrow, Herbert, Hawkinson, these will be players that we essentially never need to worry about. And we will always be able to go through and build around these three cornerstone assets, regardless of if we are contending or if we are rebuilding. So I like those cornerstone pieces with Gibbs. It is just so difficult to know what to do exactly with this team when there are massive question marks top to bottom at running back. I'm confident with Gibbs in the long term. This season, I don't really know what to expect. I think Dobbins has upside, but a very low floor. I think Akers has upside, but a very low floor. I think Kamara has upside, but a very low floor. We don't know the health of Wan'Dale Robinson at the beginning of the year. We have the Jameson Williams suspension. We'll probably be starting Jacoby Myers at the beginning of the season, but hard to know exactly what his role is going to be for the Raiders. Looking at this team top to bottom, I don't think we push into contend this season. I think that we have to go into the year with the actual plan on contending, but not burning any bridges to that rebuilding route. Because if we get to the season, right, Wan'Dale Robinson isn't healthy yet. We have to play Jacoby Myers, and he's not doing anything for us. Say one of Akers or J.K. Dobbins is a bust. Say Jahmyr Gibbs isn't producing at the beginning of the year. And say we have an injury to someone like Burrow, or say we have a random injury somewhere, which this team's already been riddled with injuries for years now. We really need to stay flexible, and that we need to have the potential to just burn this down and essentially sell every veteran on the roster not named Joe Burrow, Jahmyr Gibbs, TJ Hawkinson, Justin Herbert for long-term picks. Jindies, please let me know what your thoughts are. I'm really happy to see that you're actually out here in the live stream with us, so we can maybe bounce our ideas back and forth with each other here, just because it's very difficult projecting this team out until we have the more complete picture, knowing the health of Wan'Dale and knowing the production that we should expect with these running backs on if we should contend or if we should start accumulating 2024 picks. So let me know what your thought process is. Saying, yeah, there's also someone in the league that drafted lots of vets and looks like a strong contender. Yeah, I mean, they could always, have a bad season as well. I just think that we need to be ready to pivot over and rebuild this roster quickly if things don't go our way. I don't think we have to do that today. I would rather make that decision in week 3, make that decision in week 4. But I do think we have to be prepared for it. And I really wish I could have more for you, my friend. It's just so difficult with this team in particular when I feel like we have massive question marks everywhere. But thank you again, my man, for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. As always, if there is anything that I can do for you, please do not hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. I'd be really happy to help you out in any way that I can. And yeah, thank you so much for everything. I really hope that we were able to help you out, and really do hope that you have a great day, my friend. But real quick, we have a couple donations. Let's get to first one coming out from Tyler. Thank you. Says, hey, Mason, 12-team PPR1 quarterback. At running back, we have Gibbs, Rashad White, Antonio Gibson. Receiver, we have Olave, Smith, Judy, Quentin Johnston, Addison. Got offered Najee Palmer and Najee Jamal, both for Devonta Smith. What are your thoughts? Should we look to hold? Hell yeah. Palmer, Jamal Williams have legitimately no value. I do think that Najee Harris, if you're looking at where he's going right now in redraft leagues, is actually a pretty strong value. And while, yeah, both these players were actually in the same draft class, let me go ahead and pull out my phone real quick so I can look up Najee Harris's age, because what's funny is Najee Harris actually stayed 5 years at Alabama. So Najee Harris is a lot older than you would initially assume. Yeah, so Najee Harris is actually 25. Josh Jacobs, drafted in 2019, in comparison, is only 25 as well. So yeah, if we were to trade for Najee, I think it just has to be a a much lower price point than what you're giving here. But Justin coming out says, I forgot to mention the coolest part. He won his first championship that year. He passed late November. We kept setting his lineup. No cupcake chip either. He won legitimately. It was insane, meant to be. Yeah, that is definitely like the coolest Dynasty story that I've heard in terms of like a Dynasty. It sounds like something from a movie, to be honest. It sounds like that story is so meaningful that it sounds like someone wrote it and it's like in a movie or a book or something about it. But yeah, if you ever want to write about it on flockfantasy.com or anything, my man, I think that's an incredibly cool story. Yeah, and do you ever want to come on the channel and talk about it? I'd love to have you and love to hear more. But yeah, thank you so much again. And let me know if there's anything I can do for you. But I think that's probably all we have. I'm going to have to go through and get a decent amount of these teams done through personalized podcast. But I'll get all those sent out to y'all very soon. I don't want to be pulling up like MFL teams like this while I grew up playing on MFL and while I'm used to being able to break down teams and look at them in this fashion. I think it's probably going to be difficult to follow along in the live stream. So thank you so much, everybody. I really do appreciate y'all. And as always, if there's anything that I can do for you, please reach out to me. And yes, if you want to get your roster broken down, if you want to join the flock, all going to be found on flockfantasy.com. Use promo code FLOCK for 30% off any subscription. Get personalized content from not only myself, but all your favorite content creators. Get our premium content. Get our rankings. Join the flock. Be a part of our community. But thank you so much, everyone. Really do appreciate y'all and really hope that y'all have a great day.